There is a 3-word phrase that has not been used yet. And the fact that it exists, that NBC has constructed a protocol around it, tested it, refined it, made sure every producer knows it, tells you something important about how this case is being held inside one of the most prominent newsrooms in America. Needed offset. When a producer says those words to Savannah Guthrie while she is on the air, she knows. She steps away. She is taken into an office where she is told in private at the same moment that another anchor steps into her place and reports the story to the country. An insider described the protocol to a national outlet. The insider said they would pull her immediately, mid-segment if they had to. They said Savannah understands the code, that she came back to the broadcast with full institutional support, and that if she needs to leave again, she will be given the time. That protocol is not born from pessimism. It is born from planning for a possibility that the people in that building believe is real. You do not build a contingency for something you think will never happen. NBC's top executives, according to the same insider, have had Savannah's back throughout this entire period. That support is not separate from the protocol. It is embedded in it. The protocol says, we believe something may happen. When it does, we will protect her. Day 74. Nancy Guthrie remains officially a missing person. No arrest, no named suspect from law enforcement, no confirmed proof of life. A reward exceeding $1.2 million has produced no public resolution. But this week produced more specific detail about the state of this case than any single week in the past month. And the Smith analysis is going to examine all of it. The new names, the expert consensus, the psychological testimony from the family, the ransom note analysis, and what the NBC protocol itself, read as a data point, suggests about where this investigation stands. This is part 1 of 5. The Smith analysis always begins with what is actually known. And on day 74, what is actually known has been shaped significantly by 3 separate expert voices, all converging toward the same reading. Former FBI agent Jennifer Coffindaffer said this week that the ransom notes are torturing the Guthrie family. She used that word in a specific clinical sense. The mechanism she describes is not dramatic language. It is a precise description of a psychological state. The family is forced to hold 2 irreconcilable realities simultaneously, indefinitely, without the resolution that comes from either confirmation of death or confirmation of survival. One note says Nancy is dead. The next says she was seen alive. The family cannot dismiss either possibility because they do not have the investigative access to evaluate either one. They exist in a suspended state between grief and hope that has no natural resolution point. That is not a metaphor for how they feel. It is a description of the functional psychological outcome of an ongoing stream of contradictory communications from a source the FBI has not publicly authenticated. Coffindaffer also said something this week that the Smith analysis wants to hold carefully alongside the NBC protocol. When she read the news about the needed offset code phrase, she said, does this mean the FBI, the task force, everyone is close? She framed it as a question, not a conclusion. But a retired FBI agent who has been following this case closely, reading a news item about a media organization's emergency preparedness protocol and asking whether it suggests investigative proximity. That question carries weight beyond its casual framing. Detective Brian Martin, who has commented on this case for weeks, said the kidnappers underestimated Nancy's medical fragility. He described a hypothetical scenario, one he was clear to frame as hypothetical, in which the suspects planned a brief captivity followed by release once payment arrived. When the payment mechanism failed and when Nancy's health did not hold through even a short period of physical stress and deprivation of her medication, the plan collapsed. What began as a ransom operation became something else. Something the people responsible have been managing silently since February 9th. A third expert this week used language that is hard to quote directly without acknowledging its weight. She said the kidnappers likely disposed of Nancy because she was no longer of value to the operation. That framing is clinical in the way that forensic language sometimes has to be in order to name reality precisely. And the Smith analysis names it the same way, without dramatization, without softening it into metaphor, and without confirming it, because it has not been confirmed. What has been confirmed is that Nancy's blood was found on the front steps of her home, that her medication was left inside, that she was 84 years old and medically dependent, that the operation was executed in 41 minutes by someone who arrived with a sedative compound, and that the people who sent the original ransom notes have not communicated since February 9th. The convergence of 3 expert voices toward the same explanation in the same week is not proof, but in analytical terms, it is a signal. When credentialed practitioners with different professional backgrounds arrive at the same reading independently, the reading demands serious weight. 2 names emerged in public discussion this week that the Smith analysis is going to treat with the analytical care they require. Jay McCalmont. His name is being circulated in community sources connected to this case, with claims of a falling out and a money dispute that predates Nancy's disappearance. No official law enforcement source has confirmed any connection between McCalmont and this case. He has not been named as a suspect by the Pima County Sheriff's Department or the FBI. Clay Crouch. He is identified in reporting as a neighbor of Nancy Guthrie with prior criminal history that includes charges related to burglary and kidnapping. Again, no official connection to this case has been confirmed. The Smith analysis wants to examine what the emergence of these names actually represents as an analytical phenomenon, independent of whether either individual has any genuine connection to the crime. For 74 days, this case has operated without a publicly named person of interest. The investigation has received over 18,000 tips. It has produced no arrest. In that environment, the community that surrounds this case has been doing what communities do when the official process appears stalled. It has been building its own investigative record. People who live in the neighborhood, former law enforcement professionals watching from outside, online communities that have been reconstructing the timeline for months. They are finding names, connecting them to claims, and pushing that information into the public record. Some of that community-sourced information will be irrelevant. Some will represent the substitution of suspicion for evidence. And some of it, and this is the part that the Smith analysis takes seriously, may represent genuine leads that arrived in the public domain before they arrived in the official one. The FBI's tip infrastructure is designed to receive exactly this kind of information and evaluate it. Every name that surfaces with any specificity in connection with money, with access, with neighborhood presence, with criminal history that overlaps with the profile of this crime belongs in that system. Whether the FBI has already evaluated these names or not, the presence of the tip line is the reason to send information there rather than broadcast it. 1-800-CALL-FBI. If you know something about Jay McCalmont, Clay Crouch, or anyone else in connection with the events of January or February 2026 in the Catalina foothills of Tucson, the tip line is the right channel. The Smith analysis also wants to address the claim that surfaced this week from a source described as an insider who said the destruction in this investigation is intentional. That is one of the most serious claims made publicly about this case. It suggests not negligence, not the early leadership failures and scene management errors that former law enforcement professionals have already named on the record, but deliberate compromise of evidence. That claim has not been confirmed by any named official source. The Smith analysis treats it with the weight appropriate to an unconfirmed insider claim in a case that has already documented genuine institutional friction between the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI. Whether the claim reflects reality, reflects a misread of what happened, or reflects something more specific that the source is describing without being able to say directly, cannot be determined from outside the investigation. but it is in the public record, and it deserves to be acknowledged as such. The Savannah Guthrie dimension of this case this week was more emotionally visible than it has been in recent days, and the Smith analysis wants to engage with it directly rather than simply noting it in passing. She stepped away from the Today broadcast mid-episode. The network confirmed there was no case-related development. She returned. The code was not triggered, but the moment generated its own wave of attention because after 74 days, any deviation from the normal pattern of Savannah Guthrie being at that anchor desk is immediately read through the lens of this case. That is what her presence at the desk has come to mean. Not just composure, not just professionalism, not just the thing former FBI agents have been saying for weeks, that every morning she sits at that desk, the pressure on the people responsible for Nancy's disappearance increases. Her presence has become a kind of fixed point in the national consciousness of this case. When she deviates from it, the country notices. When she returns to it, the country exhales. Hoda Kotb said this week, sitting next to Savannah is watching what strength looks like. She said strength personified. She said it was a privilege to be beside her. The Smith analysis wants to add something to that description. Strength in this context is not the absence of suffering. Savannah Guthrie told her audience this week about the night terrors, about waking up in the middle of the night, about the question she cannot stop asking, whether she made her mother a target. That question, whether her career, her visibility, her face in America's living rooms every morning caused someone to choose Nancy, is one that cannot be resolved until the case is resolved, because the answer depends on the motive, and the motive has not been officially confirmed. If the motive was ransom, based on the assumption that Savannah could pay a large sum, then her visibility was indeed the factor. If the motive was retribution directed at the family for a private grievance, the connection may be more indirect. If the motive was something else entirely, her visibility may have been a factor she had no way to predict or prevent. That uncertainty is its own form of sustained harm. Not because Savannah Guthrie is responsible for what happened to Nancy. She is not. But because the human mind, in the absence of a clear answer, tends to fill the vacuum with the worst possible version of its own causal role. Former FBI profiler Dr. Ann Burgess addressed this possibility weeks ago when she raised the retribution theory, the idea that Nancy was taken not because of who Nancy is, but because of who her daughter is and what someone in the family's orbit believes they are owed. That theory has not been confirmed, but it sits alongside the ransom theory as an explanation that remains analytically live. The Megyn Kelly criticism of NBC this week, she called an Instagram post unfortunate given the circumstances, added another layer to the media environment surrounding this story. Whether the post was appropriate is a judgment call that different people will make differently. What the Smith analysis notes is that 74 days into a case with no resolution, every editorial decision made by the institutions and individuals connected to it will be scrutinized through the lens of what the case means to millions of people who are following it. That scrutiny is not always fair. It is always present. NBC, for its part, is managing its own institutional responsibility in this situation by building protocols around Savannah's return. The needed offset code is one of those protocols. The decision to accommodate her return or her absence based on what she needs is another. The institutional framing, we have had her back throughout, reflects a media organization that is trying to hold both its journalistic responsibility and its human one. The Smith analysis closes today with the full picture. A 3-word code that has not been used. 2 names circulating in community discussion without official confirmation. 3 expert voices converging on a reading of what happened to Nancy. A family in the 74th day of suspended grief. An investigation that has not produced an arrest. A reward exceeding $1.2 million that has not been claimed. A former FBI agent asking whether the existence of a media protocol means investigators are closer than the public knows. The Smith analysis wants to name what those elements together suggest. The investigation is not stalled in the way the word stalled is normally used. Stalled suggests nothing is happening. What appears to be happening is that something is happening inside the investigation that cannot be disclosed without affecting its outcome. The FBI does not hold detailed results of DNA analysis, cell tower sweeps, blockchain forensics, and pharmaceutical procurement tracking from a case with this level of public attention, because there is nothing to hold. They hold it because there is something to protect, because the evidence is at a stage where premature disclosure would compromise the ability to act on it. The convergence of expert opinion toward the simple explanation, ransom, gone wrong, managed in silence, is analytically credible. The behavioral record of the original ransom communications supports it. The medical profile of the victim supports it. The silence since February 9th supports it. The claim from a source that the destruction in this investigation is intentional, if accurate, suggests that someone with access to the investigation has been trying to ensure that what happened stays hidden. And intentional concealment suggests there is something specific to conceal. What remains unknown publicly: the name of the person or persons responsible, the location of Nancy, whether the evidence has produced a result that is being held back for strategic reasons, whether any of the community source names being discussed this week represent what law enforcement has been working toward. What is known? The evidence exists. The FBI has it. They have had it for 74 days. The code phrase has been constructed. The protocol is ready. Nancy Guthrie was born on January 27, 1942. She raised 3 children after losing her husband at 49. She built a life in the Tucson area spanning 5 decades. She attended virtual church on Sunday mornings. She ordered her own Uber rides. She was taken on a February morning by someone who had been to her neighborhood 3 times before they came for her. She deserves to be found. Her family deserves to know. The tip line is 1-800-CALL-FBI, anonymous at tips.fbi.gov. Over $1.2 million, no identification required. The code exists. The name is in the evidence. The weight of 74 days is still being carried by a woman at an anchor desk who wakes up at night and wonders if she is the reason. She is not the reason. The person who came 3 times is the reason, and that person left a record.